On the very first day of my emergency management and homeland security certificate program, I left my apartment filled with excitement. Always having been interested in pursuing security studies, I was eager to learn everything related to anti-terrorism. But as life would have it, on my first day of class, I was greeted by a 3-hour lecture on the science of earthquakes. So that evening, as I returned home, I immediately burst into tears. Here I was, a 20-year-old who had spent the first 19 years of her life living in Western Europe, far away from devastating earthquakes, hurricanes, and tornadoes. And all I could think to myself now was, what did I get myself into? Luckily, keeping an open mind, within just a couple of weeks, I totally fell in love with this field of emergency management I had never heard of before. And since then, I've created the habit of asking every new emergency manager who I meet what led them to this unique career path. And I have come to the following conclusion. For far too long, emergency management has remained an obscure field in which emergency managers somehow fell into. Too few people know what it means when we introduce ourselves as emergency managers, as epitomized by the classic, "Oh, so you work in an ER?" And so, too few people consider this dynamic career as a rewarding path for their professional future. Now, no other disaster in modern history has given more legitimacy to the field of emergency management than the COVID-19 pandemic. In all parts of the US and the world, this public health disaster has exposed citizens, company heads, and elected officials to the life-saving skills that we have to offer. But just like after every tragedy, time will pass, and so will the interest level associated with increased funding, job positions, and opportunities. Unless we keep the momentum going and do what it takes to popularize the field of emergency management. So how do we do that? I want you to take a moment and think back to what some of the most recurring things are that you do as an emergency manager. For a lot of us, it looks a little bit like this. We read books, we take ICS classes, we read after action reports, take some more ICS classes, and attend webinars. That's what we call input. We take information in. We do that because it's going to make us better emergency managers. And we think that the better we become at our job, the better off our profession will be. But the success of our profession does not solely depend on us. If it did, we'd already be set because there's no lack of desire to do good in our field. And the success of our profession also does not depend on how well we do our job. Unlike firefighters, paramedics, and police officers, we operate behind closed doors. Nobody sees you putting in 12-hour shift after 12-hour shift in the EOC, except for maybe your partner and your kids. And the thing is, people only believe in what they can see, and they can't see us. So, how do we change that? Again, traditionally, most of us operate in an input mode. We tend to consume information, but don't really produce any. But in order to keep our field relevant, we have to transition from passive taking to active giving, from input mode to output mode. Let me provide you with some examples. Are you going on a deployment? Write about it. It has never been easier for us to share our experiences with the world. Whether you use a platform like Medium or you maintain a personal blog, your writing can be shared with thousands of people and not just your LinkedIn connections. My esteemed friend and colleague Jenny Novak, who serves as a Director of Emergency Management and Continuity for the California State University System, has been maintaining a personal blog for a few years now. She does a really great job of not just making things interesting for us emergency managers, but also really piquing the interest of others. A few months ago, she published an article titled, "Emergency Managers, Who Are They and How Are They Helping with COVID-19?" And that article was shared far and wide and is the perfect example of what we need more of. Now, my second example relates to sharing human stories. If there's one thing I've learned working for the Walt Disney Company, it's that stories are what makes us emotionally connect to others, listen to them, and learn from them. That's why at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, I decided to host a podcast highlighting the stories of those working and helping in the front lines of the pandemic. I made the very deliberate decision to not just highlight emergency managers, but include nurses, social workers, and artists turned mask makers. I wanted for the content to resonate with everyone, particularly those outside of our field. My third example relates to representation. Representation matters. Kids can't be who they can't see. And nobody knows that better than Gabrielle Alman. Gabby Alman is a former emergency responder turned story whisperer who assists writers and producers in sourcing experts and ground truthing storylines and maintaining a roster of emergency managers who Hollywood filmmakers have access to in order to ensure that their writing includes our voices. Now, there's a lot more examples out there of what else we can do that does not require having a VIP access to Hollywood. We can be doing some more mentoring, and mentoring not just aspiring emergency managers, but local high school students or middle school students. And we can speak more publicly about our field, any opportunity that we get. The more outspoken we as emergency managers become, the more lay people will learn about and find value in our field, thereby opening the doors for generations of emergency managers to come. For the benefit of our profession, we have to transition from being simple emergency management practitioners to becoming fully fledged emergency management advocates. No matter our years of experience, our age, or our position, each one of us has what it takes to create enticing creative content to introduce emergency management to the world. Only through action can we bridge the gap between us and the public and elevate the emergency management profession to new heights.